Hello, and welcome to Outlook Video, your nationally recognized, award-winning LGBTQIA+ TV news magazine. I'm Roberta Gonzalez-Gregg. Outlook Video, usually brought to you in the pre-pandemic times via Create TV Studios in San Jose, now comes to you via Zoom. We sincerely wish that you, your family, your loved ones, and friends are all safe and well. Today, I welcome Tanya, the Director of LGBTQ and Status of Women Commissions with San Mateo County and Board Director of the Library Foundation. Welcome, Tanya, and way to go.
Thank you for having me, Roberta. I appreciate this lovely introduction.
Okay. Well, the whole idea is to get to know more about these commissions and what you do. So, when did these commissions begin in the San Mateo County?
The two commissions that I work with both started in very different times.
Ah,
And let me just say that County of San Mateo has over 20 different commissions, and
oh,
they
is
all
that
serve,
right?
yeah, they all serve
Oh,
different purposes depending on the issues that they're assigned. So
okay.
with the Commission on the Status of Women, that started in the 80s when Jackie Spear and Anna Eshu were on the Board of Supervisors at that time. So it's been around for a really long time, and it's done a variety of different work. The LGBTQ Commission is more recent. It was enacted in 2014, I believe, mid-year in about June 2014.
Yes, I recall that reading, doing some of my homework and checking these out. But I wanted you to inform our audience so that we would know that this is not something that just popped up overnight. Um, but having said that, what is it that the these two commissions do in our community? Um, it sounds like it encompasses. I mean, the LGBT community is quite quite large, as well as women even more so. So what is it that these commissions do in the San Mateo community?
They are both advisory commissions and they advise our Board of Supervisors.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, advise? Yes, just simply advise. They really research and study that issue, like women's issues, and they focus in on specific things under that umbrella, for example. And then if they choose to make a recommendation or other kinds of advisory work, they in turn provide that to the Board of Supervisors and or the County of San Mateo.
Well, that's really pivotal because what you advise to the commission, to the board of directors, and that gives them the ideas of where to move from there. You know, you're kind of like a traffic monitor, sort of, and you're saying, look, let's put the traffic over this way because here has some special needs, and here where we see more things happening, especially within pandemic, it's really hit a lot of our seniors and our LGBTQ plus seniors. And people of color. So I would imagine on both of these commissions, there are many things that fall into those categories, correct?
Absolutely. You bring up an excellent point about intersectionality.
Hmm.
My one commission, LGBTQ commission, may do a lot of research around visibility, for example, being able to normalize LGBTQ people within the community. And my commission on the status of women are studying, for example, mental health and what COVID has impacted the community around mental health services and wellness. And yet, those are two different things, but yet they come together because the audiences are so wide and deep, really. I mean, we all identify in a variety of different ways. So it really may be one issue that they work on, and yet the audience is pretty broad.
And speaking of which, I was just reading in today's Chronicle how the Biden administration is changing some, thank goodness, is changing some um, protocol, if you will, which the ICE has been doing in the past, particularly with the past administration, and that is when people go um, to their court hearings, immigrants go to their court hearings, then they're being arrested on the spot, and that's being changed. So that's really something very positive. Do you also deal with immigration issues with in the LGBTQ community and people of color?
Well, I would say, yes. I mean, it's as I said, it's an inclusive community, and with increasing immigration, I would say that here in the county, the the number of community members. I mean, we can look at census numbers. What I think of though is our San Mateo County Pride Center, which is separate from the commission, but we of course always collaborate. And the Pride Center is a wonderful place where they actually do direct service for community members. So your question around immigration, the commission would have to study more around that topic and learn about what's happening in the county. And the Pride Center, we would go to them and say, who are you serving? Who are immigrants and, part of the community? So, and then there are a couple other groups, depending on what that topic is, that we'd reach out to. I mean, I would have to say the county is very good at being able to collaborate and work with a variety of different groups, whether they're nonprofit, government related, or part of the business sector.
I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my next question was about collaborations. So you do collaborations with a variety of services in the community? Yes.
Oh
Okay.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
we have to, and that's for a variety of reasons. I think there is no one office that handles LGBTQ issues, policy, and direct services. We all hold different roles, and so, as I said, the Pride Center is a great place for mental health clinical services, as well as peer group services and programs. The Pride Initiative, which is a different group, it's a health equity initiative through the Office of Diversity and Equity. They lead our Pride celebration, which is an annual event to celebrate, our history. And we also have outlet, through adolescent counseling services. They provide a lot of
Ah,
services for youth, not just here, but, all across the peninsula and South Bay. So you've heard of them,
yes,
ACS?
indeed. Yes, I have heard of them. I'm glad you brought them up because uh, in 2020 you participated and hosted. Were you a host of the Rise 2020 conference for women of color and connecting various resources and projects? Um, that might have been one of your resources, but there are lots. Tell us about that particular conference and what was the outcome and what is it doing moving forward?
Well, that's a great shift to my other commission, the Commission on the
Ah,
Status of Women. They So COVID has been a huge impact on helping both commissions, but this particular commission to shift how they connect with other women. And I say connect because connection has been something that people have been longing for. There's been a huge, deep sense of isolation since COVID. I think there's this spring of hope right now that people are getting vaccinated, which is happening right now. But with Rise 2020, we were doing this in-person conference before that, um, and which is very invigorating with when you're in a room of 200 other women and you're all joining in on networking and sharing resources and services and mentorship, and then that has to stop. So with that virtual shift, the Rice 2020 conference was an opportunity to expand a one-day in-person conference to a one-week virtual conference. We shifted everything to Zoom. We had panel discussions, we had keynote interviews, we had Women's Equality Day, and uh, which we had Congresswoman Jackie Spear and join us, for that day. But it was just an amazing event to bring a variety of different women together on all different backgrounds and work backgrounds to be able to learn a little bit more about leadership, about representation in government and in your work, but also mental health. So we plan to do another one in March of 2022, and it's going to be the Rise 2022 conference. So we're in the thick of planning that out right now.
Oh, that's something to look forward to. Yes, indeed. Thank you so very, very much for sharing this insight with us and this information.
So one of the websites is the LGBTQ Commission webpage, and they can find a variety of resources there. The URL is actually lgbtq.smcgov.org. The other
Terrific.
website is our Pride Celebration website, and Pride Celebration this year is June 6th through June 12th. So the Pride Celebration website is smcpridecelebration.com.
Something I'm looking forward to as well. And so, as you know, Outlook Video covers all the Pride festivities all up and down the Bay Area, from San Francisco down south to San Jose, Silicon Valley, uh, and San Mateo Pride as well. So it would be. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that we'll be able to do some things in person. If not, perhaps we can join. You can join us again via Zoom.
Yes, that would be fantastic. Thank you for spreading that information out.
You bet. And thank you as well. Thanks again for sharing your time, your insight, and this information with our viewers. We very, very much appreciate it. We appreciate you being on these commissions and doing the work that you do. All
Thank you
righty.
so much for having me.
You bet. All right.
We love to get mail from you. Email us at comments@outlookvideo.org.
To contact us by phone, call 408-293-3040, extension 205.
Visit our website at outlookvideo.org.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/outlookvideo.
And connect with us at facebook.com/outlookvideo.
From Neuroscience Labs to Church Pews, director Alex Liu in his film A Sexplanation features conversations with psychologists, sex researchers, and even a Catholic priest. The documentary follows Alex on his quest to uncover naked truths and hard facts about sex, no matter how awkward it gets. Take a look.
Indiana. That's right, Mike Pence's home state is also home to the world's premier sex research organization. Founded by biologist Alfred Kinsey, the Kinsey Institute conducted the first in-depth studies of American sexual behavior in the 40s and 50s. The Kinsey reports revealed that almost all Americans masturbated, premarital sex was common, and homosexuality was normal, upending long-held moral and legal codes.
So sex is in the brain, sex is in the mind, it's not necessarily in the genitals. So those two big things reinforced that how you felt about sexuality empowered your response, and also that pleasure is very, very important.
Great. It's a good subject.
I've had interviewers and other people say to me, like, why study sex and pleasure? Shouldn't you be studying something important like cancer? And our response to them, which is kind of felt bad that we had to make a response and sort of justify why we do this research, is that, you know, as a clinician, I understand that pleasure is so important. People have a lot of anxiety, have trouble experiencing pleasure. Depression, one of the key hallmarks of depression is the inability to experience pleasure. I think what we've been able to show is that orgasm is a big brain event. Sensory, motor, reward areas. So I think an orgasm a day might keep the doctor away. I think it's great for people. It's a workout for the body, it's a workout for the brain, and feeling good is good for you.
And here with me in the studio is a very refreshed Alex Liu. Thank you for coming onto the program.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us, why is film your preferred method of storytelling?
Yeah, I think the goal of best films, right, is to help you empathize with other people who are different backgrounds, different experiences, and film is, to me at least, the most efficient way to do that. In our film is 80 minutes, but in 2 hours or less, you can live an entirely different life and see the world from an entirely different viewpoint, and begin to maybe think and act a little differently in your actual life, being exposed to these different stories. So film to me, though I love all art mediums, film to me is the fastest, quickest, most efficient way to get people to see things from a different point of view.
You graduated out of college with a degree in molecular toxicology. How did that pan out into becoming a filmmaker?
Well, so right out of college, I always loved the biological sciences. I think I was drawn to it because I'm gay, and the biological sciences offered answers about the diversity of human sexual expression that I wasn't getting anywhere else. And I came out of college. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I started to work in biotech, helping develop cancer drugs. But I really just loved presenting about the science much more than I like actually doing the science. And so I kind of made a flip to science reporting, science journalism. It became very clear to me in my adult life that a lack of science literacy was a huge problem when it came to a lot of the issues we have to solve in this country. So I thought I could do my little part and help, increase science literacy. I was lucky enough to work with Neil deGrasse Tyson at Nova Science Now, and I really just fell in love with film and video as a way to entertain people, and then maybe you can slip in a little bit of science to get people to kind of understanding how the world works. Yeah, so kind of using that same methodology, I basically, was still dealing a lot of sexual shame in my life at at this point, and again, science reporting, that's my instinct. Go into the research, go into the data, see what it is. And I realized that if people in America, if schools in America were not willing to teach about sex, I had this scientific training, I had this reporting background, filmmaking background, maybe I could go and do my little part and put together a film that could kind of explain how to think critically about sex and sexuality.
We just saw that first clip of you in that, what is it, an MRI machine?
Right.
And you were pitching tent.
Right.
And,
doing my part for science, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I noticed the music that you used. It was the Nutcracker.
Yep. Yeah.
So how did you come across? Why did you use that?
Yep. There are a lot of little puns and Easter eggs throughout the movie that I hope people pick up on. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the purpose of that mask that you had on?
Yeah, the Hannibal Lecter mask. Essentially, they're trying to, we know so little about the human body on a sexual axis. So what they're trying to do in this experiment is just to understand where in the brain does sexual pleasure live. And so in order to get the measurements in the brain has to be completely still. So that mask is to kind of lock me into place so that I don't move my head so they can get the best measurements possible.
Oh, so it's to restrict movement.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, so it's not to keep you from yelling or...
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you want to keep you quiet, they would have stuffed it in your mouth.
Right, right.
Tell us, how has being Asian American additionally impacted your development of your sexuality?
Oh yeah, I think it's a huge component, especially being, you're a minority, and then I'm gay, so minority in a minority, a very small minority. You just never see yourself portrayed in any media, advertisements, anything, in a sexually positive light, right? I think Asians, although things are changing now, for the first time in my life, I feel like people are actually thinking about this more critically. But I think most depictions of Asian people were not sexual in any way, very asexual, or even like anti-sexual in a kind of a very negative way. So I think it took me a little while to find my voice as a sexual being because I didn't know where I fit. I've been in so many situations where people just simply said, I don't find Asians attractive. Like it's a very Asian men attractive, I should say. It's something I kind of still will probably battle with my entire life. But I would say to any Asian Americans out there who feel similarly, go to Asia. That is my best advice to you, because in Asia, you see, there's a plurality, if not majority, of people who see Asian men as, full sexual beings, images plastered everywhere. Going to Asia actually was a huge source of being able to see kind of how the culture I grew up in wasn't the only way you could see Asian men sexually.
What was the communication like with your parents? Because I mean, for me, I don't even know the know the Cantonese words for any of those body parts. Nothing at all. Yeah.
Well, I'm lucky that my parents both went to, my mom was born in the States. My dad came in when he was 12. So we could talk about it in English. Although it's interesting, my parents have kind of become the people in the community when there are Asian immigrants who don't know how to talk about these things or confused about these things. They go to them because they've gone through the coming out process. They've gone through the lack of sex education and how to deal with all this, the kind of patients. But yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to have parents who understood right away the challenges that I was dealing with coming out, challenges dealing with sex. And if they didn't know the answers, they were resourceful enough to help me find the answers. So whether that was through therapy, whether that was through queer centers, community centers. I was very lucky. I'm very, very fortunate to have parents who've been very supportive in that.
One would think that after Stonewall in '69 and then later San Francisco becoming the forefront of the LGBT rights movement, one would think that the LGBT community would have paved the way to a shame-free development of your sexuality. But it seems like it hasn't. So where did the community drop the ball?
I think a lot about this, and I actually think things would have been a lot different without HIV/AIDS. I think HIV/AIDS is kind of one of those, milestone events in the gay community that things were getting better. If you look in the 70s, things were opening up. The sexual revolution was really getting people to be more open about their sex lives. But with HIV/AIDS, it all of a sudden became this huge moral panic. And gay sex especially was seen now more as kind of disgusting, immoral, right? It became this fodder to demonize gay people. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of the sex education I went through in the 80s and 90s was a reaction to HIV/AIDS. Only talking about gay sex as this incredibly risky, certain death kind of behavior. And so things are much better now. I think a lot of queer activists did their part in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to push past a lot of that backlash. I take your point because I do think a lot, especially looking at like the marriage equality fights, I think there was a concerted, deliberate effort to desexualize gay people because, talking about normalizing anal sex was not a winning political message. So I think, unfortunately, I just happened to grow up during this time of backlash, but things are getting much better now, and I credit queer activists for making that possible.
When I hear porn as a public health crisis, I think of like opioid abuse, I think of depression, I think of these are public health crises. It's hard for me to see that being a constructive way to deal with porn.
I'm not saying pornography is worse than the opioid epidemic or worse than teen suicide, because it's not. What I wanted to do is I wanted to wave a red flag and let parents know, the pornography of today is so much different, so much worse, I think.
Why was it important for you to talk with conservatives who are on the opposite side of this issue?
To understand an issue, whether or not you agree with it or not, it's incumbent on any reporter or documentarian to at least, within a good faith way, understand the other side. And conservatives, they're kind of the political force that is stopping good, comprehensive sex education in our schools. So I wanted to understand why. And it's interesting, I'm actually a lot more sympathetic to the conservative point of view after doing this film, though I don't agree with it. Their concern is that somehow schools will take away the family's right to instill values into their children. And I think it's true. Families have the right, the sole right to instill values to their children. But the problem about that when it comes to sex and sex education is that if you are talking about sex in the home, especially with conservative families, I worry about, are they actually telling accurate information? Is it misinformation? Is it frankly ignorant? Is it very shaming? And even with progressive liberal families, I worry that there's just silence because they never talked about it when they were growing up. They don't have the good sex education. So I think when it comes to conservatives and conservative values, it might be just a bridge too far to actually get them to be part of the solution. But I wonder if we focus on providing sex education, not to children, but to families, to broaden the idea that it's a partnership between families, educators, to come together to develop curricula with the same goal of protecting our children from sexual assault, developing healthy habits around sex and sexuality, to making sure children grow into their adulthood, understanding what a healthy sex life looks like. I think there's a lot more common ground than I initially anticipated.
And what is the takeaway that you want for your audience?
I think there's just so little known about sex and sexuality. The research isn't there, the education isn't there. We're all dealing with this kind of shame-filled soup. It's just the air we breathe in many ways. And so the only path I see forward is if we're just more and more open and honest about our experiences, whatever that is. And not only are we open and honest about it, we're able to listen to other people's experiences as non-judgmentally as possible. We all have our biases, we all have our reactions, but to understand that, it isn't gay and straight, there isn't just a few sexualities. There's 7.8 billion people on this planet, there's 7.8 billion sexualities, and we all have our different, desires, kinks, quirks. And so the more we can be open about that, the more people can see that there are just so many different ways to live a healthy sexual life. I think the more comfortable we all will be about trying to figure that for ourselves in a way that's healthy and fully expressed.
The documentary is A Sexplanation, and it's coming soon to a film festival near you. For more information, go to asexplanation.com. In San Francisco, this is Raymond Donald Hong for Outlook Video.
How do you define an orgasm? Define that for me, sexual being. How do you define sex?
Hi, I'm Alex. America raised me to be ignorant about sex.
Did you ever think you had to have a sex talk with the kids?
I always thought Dad should do it.
But in America, comprehensive sex ed still meets a lot of resistance.
They should stay out of sex. That belongs to the family.
But if you, your parents, and their parents never learned to talk about sex, how do you learn to talk about sex? So, at 36 years old, I'm finally gonna confront my fears head on.
For the prostate stimulation, put it in deeper.
You're probably wondering why I came to you.
Yes, I was wondering, Alex.
I do have a lot of sexual thoughts that that doesn't seem right.
I think it's time to start asking some questions. For starters, what the America?
There's probably gonna be poop.